Aiden never believed in love at first sight. Until he met her. She was beautiful in an almost unreal way, sleek silver hair, piercing violet eyes, and a quiet confidence that made her stand out even in a crowded space station. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met. Mysterious, intelligent, and surprisingly warm, despite her cold, calculating exterior. Maybe, just maybe, he was finally lucky in love. But luck had never been Aiden's strong suit. Because the girl of his dreams? She was an alien cyborg assassin. And her next target was him. The diner on Nova 7 wasn't anything special. A cramped, dimly lit hole in the wall, the kind of place where off-world traders and bounty hunters could grab a drink without drawing too much attention. The neon lights buzzed faintly overhead, flickering with each shift in the station's artificial gravity. The air smelled of fried synth meat and cheap engine oil. But Aiden wasn't paying attention to any of that. His focus was entirely on her. Lyra. She sat across from him, her silver hair catching the low light, violet eyes locked onto his like she was studying something beneath the surface. Her presence was effortless, calm, poised, yet oddly detached. "Tell me about Earth," she asked, resting her chin on her palm. Aiden exhaled, leaning back. "Not much to tell. It's a mess. Overcrowded, polluted. But it's home." She tilted her head slightly, as if filing away that information for later. "Would you ever go back?" The question made him pause. He hadn't really thought about it. Couldn't think of a single reason why he would. "Not really," he admitted. "I don't belong there." For the first time that night, her expression changed. Just for a second. A flicker of something, recognition? Sadness? But then it was gone. Aiden was about to ask about her past, but he never got the chance. Because at that exact moment. Crash! A plasma bolt tore through the window beside them, a blinding streak of energy that detonated against the opposite wall. The force of the explosion sent shards of reinforced glass flying through the air. The diner erupted into chaos. Patrons screamed. Tables overturned. The smell of burnt ozone filled the air. Aiden barely had time to flinch before Lyra moved. Fast. Faster than humanly possible. 1 second, she was sitting across from him, the next, she had grabbed his wrist and yanked him to the ground. "Stay down," she ordered, her voice sharp, unwavering. Aiden's pulse pounded in his ears. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his body wouldn't move. Lyra stood. And in that moment, everything changed. Her right arm shifted. Metal plates unfolded from beneath her skin, mechanical components snapping into place with precision, revealing the sleek frame of an integrated energy rifle. Aiden's breath caught in his throat. That wasn't normal. She wasn't normal. And then, she opened fire. The first shot tore through their attacker's chest, sending him crumpling to the floor. The second barely had time to react before she moved, inhumanly fast, twisting past the plasma blast and retaliating with a precise, calculated shot straight to his visor. Boom! His body hit the floor before his weapon did. Aiden pressed himself against the overturned table, heart hammering. This wasn't some random shootout. The attackers were targeting them specifically. Targeting her. He peeked over the wreckage just in time to see the last gunman lunging at Lyra with a vibroblade. She didn't even blink. With impossible speed, she sidestepped, caught his wrist, and twisted. The sickening crunch of shattered bone was drowned out by his scream. One final shot, point blank. And it was over. Silence filled the wreckage of the diner, broken only by the distant wail of security sirens. Lyra exhaled slowly, her arms shifting back to normal as the weapon folded seamlessly into her flesh. She turned to Aiden. His mind raced, pieces clicking into place at a terrifying speed. She wasn't just some mysterious traveler. She wasn't just some off-world girl with a charming smile. She was a cyborg. And she had been lying to him. They barely made it out of Nova 7 alive. Lyra's ship cut through the void of space, leaving behind the chaos, the wreckage, the bodies. Aiden sat in the cockpit, breath still uneven, pulse racing like an engine on the verge of overheating. His mind was spinning. Nothing made sense anymore. Across from him, Lyra stood near the control panel, her silhouette outlined by the soft glow of the ship's dashboard. She hadn't spoken since they left the station. Aiden swallowed hard, his throat dry. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. Who the hell are you? For a long moment, she didn't answer. She just stood there, unmoving, as if the question itself was too heavy to lift. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost swallowed by the hum of the ship's engines, she said, I was sent to kill you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Aiden felt his stomach drop. A slow, creeping cold spread through his chest. His hands clenched into fists. And what? He forced out a bitter laugh. You decided to take me on a date first? Lyra turned to face him, her violet eyes unreadable. But there was something there, something he couldn't quite place. Regret? Guilt? I didn't expect to like you, she admitted. I didn't expect you to be different. Aiden scoffed, shaking his head. Different? I'm just some guy. Why the hell does the universe want me dead? Lyra hesitated. She looked away, as if choosing her next words carefully. Because you're not just some guy, she finally said. You have something inside you, something powerful. The people who hired me, they fear what you could become. Aiden's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? His voice was sharper now, tinged with something between confusion and anger. Lyra opened her mouth to answer. Beep. 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 The ship's alarms blared through the cockpit. Lyra's head snapped toward the controls. Her hands moved fast, fingers flying over the dashboard as a red warning screen lit up in front of them. We've been tracked, she said, her voice turning urgent. They're coming. Aiden pushed himself up from his seat. Who's coming? Lyra didn't answer immediately. She tapped a few commands, pulling up a holodisplay. The scanners showed 3 ships closing in fast, black, sleek, and armed to the teeth. Bounty hunters. Or worse. She turned back to him, her expression serious. Aiden, I know you don't trust me. Her voice was steady, but there was something else beneath it. Something real. But if you want to survive, you need to trust me now. Aiden stared at her. The woman who had just admitted she was supposed to kill him. The woman who had saved his life instead. The alarms blared louder. The enemy ships were closing in. He didn't have time to think. Did he really have a choice? The pursuit was relentless. Through asteroid belts, abandoned war zones, and deep space anomalies, Aiden and Lyra barely stayed ahead of their pursuers. The enemy's ships never tired, never relented. It was a hunt, and Aiden could feel it, like a predator playing with its prey before the final strike. Aiden had never even touched a spaceship's controls before today. Now, his hands gripped the flight stick, white-knuckled, drenched in sweat. Left! Left! Lyra shouted. I know! Aiden yanked the controls, sending the ship into a steep dive just as a missile streaked past them, exploding in a burst of blue energy. The force of the blast sent shockwaves rippling through the hull. The cockpit flickered. The shields were barely holding. Aiden fought the urge to scream. They're not stopping! He gritted through his teeth. Lyra was a blur of motion, fingers flying over the console. Diverting power to aft shields. Hold it steady. No, don't do that! Aiden had yanked the controls too hard. The ship spun out of control, hurtling toward a debris field of broken battlecruisers, rusted skeletons of warships long forgotten. Hold on! He jerked the ship upward at the last second. The underbelly of the hull scraped against twisted metal as they shot through the wreckage, barely squeezing between the remains of a destroyed dreadnought. The enemy ships followed. Another blast shook the ship. Shields at 10%! Lyra shouted. We take another hit, and we're space dust! Aiden's mind raced. Think. Think. Then, suddenly, silence. The ship's alarm stopped. The display screen flickered. The attackers were gone. Aiden gasped for breath, his chest rising and falling as he stared at the scanners. Lyra's fingers hovered over the control panel, tense, unmoving. Her violet eyes flickered across the screen. "They didn't give up," she muttered. "They're waiting. Watching." Aiden exhaled, still gripping the flight stick like it was the only thing keeping him alive. "So what do we do?" Lyra turned to him. Her voice was calm, but her expression was unreadable. "We find out why they want you dead." The research facility floated like a ghost, orbiting the dying ember of a once mighty star. No signs of life. No distress beacons. Just a hollow husk of metal and forgotten history. Aiden and Lyra docked the ship in silence. Neither spoke as they stepped onto the cold steel floor, the sound of their boots echoing through the desolate corridors. Flickering lights cast long shadows. The air smelled stale, untouched for years. "Not a fan of haunted space stations," Aiden muttered. Lyra didn't respond. She was focused, her cybernetic eye scanning the facility, reading energy signatures, searching for something. Then she found it. A hidden lab, buried deep within the station. The doors groaned as they slid open, revealing rows of shattered containment pods. Broken glass. Dried fluid. Terminals still flickering with half-corrupted files. Lyra moved first, sifting through the data. Aiden stood frozen. There was a file with his name on it. Slowly, he stepped forward. His fingers hovered over the console before pressing play. A distorted voice crackled through the speakers. "Subject A01. Last of the prototypes. Genetic reconstruction. Anomalous results. Potential threat." The words barely made sense. But one thing was clear. Aiden wasn't just some guy from Earth. He wasn't just unlucky. He was made. Not by humans. Not by Earth. But by something else. A lost experiment. A forgotten secret. And now, a target. Lyra's voice pulled him back. "They fear you," she said, scanning the files. "Because they don't understand what you are." Aiden's hands trembled. He looked at his reflection in the cracked screen of a monitor. Same face. Same eyes. But suddenly, he felt like a stranger to himself. "I don't understand what I am." Lyra hesitated, then did something unexpected. She reached for him. Her fingers were cool, almost mechanical, but her touch was real. Somehow, that mattered. "We'll figure it out," she said. Aiden swallowed hard. "Together?" She nodded. "Together." The final battle came sooner than expected. Aiden and Lyra barely had time to process what they'd discovered before alarms blared throughout the abandoned research facility. "They're here," Lyra muttered. Through the station's cracked observation window, Aiden saw them, a fleet. Not just a small strike team like before. Dozens of warships. A force meant to erase any trace of him, no matter the cost. Aiden exhaled. "We can't win this." Lyra turned to him, and for the first time since they'd met, she smiled. "Then let's cheat." She pulled him toward a console deep in the facility, activating a terminal filled with forgotten technology. Ancient scripts scrolled across the screen, barely decipherable. "Aiden, listen to me." She placed a hand on his chest. "This place, it was made for you. It holds the key to what you are. If we access it, if we unlock it, we have a chance," Aiden finished. Outside, the enemy fleet opened fire. Explosions rattled the station. The structure groaned, its outer layers shearing apart under the barrage. They had seconds. Lyra's eyes glowed as she worked the console. The system reacted to Aiden's presence, ancient circuits awakening after years of dormancy. Then pain. A surge of energy ripped through Aiden's body. It was like every cell inside him was being rewritten, ignited, reborn. And when the pain finally faded, he knew. Knew what he was. Knew why they feared him. Knew what he could do. Outside, the warships charged up for a final strike. Aiden stepped forward. He raised his hand. And unleashed it. A shockwave, pure energy, erupted from his body, racing across space, crashing into the fleet with impossible force. One by one, the ships went dark. Their systems fried. Their weapons silenced. In an instant, the war was over. Aiden staggered, gasping for breath. His hands trembled. His heart pounded. He wasn't just a target anymore. He was something else. Something more. He turned to Lyra. What am I now? She looked at him, her expression unreadable. Something the universe has never seen before. The sky stretched endlessly before them, painted in shades of gold and violet as the sun rose over the uncharted world below. Aiden sat on the edge of their stolen ship, the hull still scarred from battle, watching the light chase away the last remnants of night. The planet beneath them was untouched, a paradise hidden in the vast reaches of space, one they could finally call their own. Lyra stood beside him, arms crossed, her violet eyes reflecting the horizon. For the first time since he met her, she wasn't watching for threats, wasn't calculating the next move. She was just there. Aiden stretched, rolling his shoulders. So, he said, his voice lighter than it had been in weeks. What now? Lyra turned to him, her lips curling into the smallest of smiles. We build a future. He raised an eyebrow. We? She hesitated, just for a moment, then reached out, her fingers brushing his. Despite the cool metal of her cybernetic components, her touch was warm. Yes, she said softly. We. Aiden looked at her, really looked at her. The assassin who had been sent to kill him. The woman who had saved his life instead. The one who had fought by his side, who had seen him at his weakest, at his most broken, and stayed. He laced his fingers through hers. Not exactly the life I imagined. Lyra smirked. You imagined a life? Aiden laughed. Fair point. The ship's engines hummed behind them, ready to take them anywhere in the galaxy. They had no mission, no orders, no enemies hunting them, at least, not yet. For the first time in his life, Aiden wasn't running from something. He was running towards something. As the dawn painted the sky in brilliant gold, a human and his cyborg assassin waifu set off toward the unknown, ready to write a new legend. The ship's thrusters hummed to life, sending soft vibrations through the metal beneath their feet. The planet below them, untouched, unknown, beckoned with endless possibilities. It could be their home, or just another stop along the way. Aiden wasn't sure yet. But one thing was certain, he wasn't alone anymore. Lyra pulled up the ship's star map, scanning for potential destinations. The Syndicate won't stay down forever, she muttered. They'll rebuild, send more hunters. Aiden sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, I figured as much. So what? We keep running? Lyra shook her head. No. We get stronger. Aiden watched her, saw the determination in her gaze. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. She had chosen this path, chosen him. He smirked. All right. What's the plan, boss? Lyra rolled her eyes but didn't correct him. Instead, she zoomed in on a cluster of uncharted systems. There are rumors of a hidden archive. A place filled with ancient knowledge, lost technology, maybe even something that can tell us exactly what you are. Aiden leaned closer, intrigued. And you just happen to know about this, how? Lyra shot him a sideways glance. I used to kill people for information, remember? Right. How could I forget? She tapped a set of coordinates, sending them to the ship's autopilot. It won't be easy. If this archive exists, we won't be the only ones looking for it. Aiden leaned back in his seat, a grin tugging at his lips. Since when has anything in my life been easy? The ship lifted off, engines roaring as they ascended into the unknown. Behind them, the planet faded into the distance, its golden sunrise swallowed by the vastness of space. Ahead, an uncertain future awaited. But for the first time, Aiden wasn't afraid of it. With Lyra by his side, he was ready. The ship drifted through the cold expanse of space, guided by nothing but Lyra's coordinates, and a sense of purpose either of. Aiden sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching the distant stars blur past. His mind was still reeling from everything he had learned. He wasn't just human. He wasn't just a runaway. He was something else, an experiment, a weapon, a threat to powers beyond his understanding. And now, he was heading straight toward the only place that might have answers. Lyra stood at the ship's control panel, her violet eyes scanning data streams with machine-like precision. She had barely spoken since they left the planet, her focus empty. Finally, Aiden broke the silence. So, this AR. Lyra didn't turn. Records. Genetic data. Something that can tell us what they did to. Aiden exhaled. And what if we don't like what we? She finally looked at him. Then we decide what comes next. Her words lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Aiden nodded, leaning back in his seat. He wasn't sure if he was ready for the truth. But running wasn't an option anymore. Suddenly, the ship's sensors beeped. Lyra's gaze snapped to the console. We've got company. Aiden's stomach twisted. Syndicate? She frowned. No. Something else. A holographic display flickered to life, revealing the silhouette of a derelict station floating ahead, a massive, rusted structure caught in the gravitational pull of a dying star. It was ancient, its hull covered in layers of dust and ice. But something about it felt wrong. Lyra zoomed in on the station's markings. This is it. The archive. Aiden stared at the station, a sense of unease settling in his chest. Then why does it feel like walking into a graveyard? Lyra powered down the ship's weapons. Because some things were meant to be forgotten. And yet here they were, about to wake them up.